I've spent some time imagining what it must have been like for the Apostle John to remember the Garden of Gethsemane experience. And so this is a little monologue that I've written as I imagine he might tell the story to a friend. I'm an old man now, tired and often lost in my memories. The sun feels good on my back. My hands and feet are always cold, and the heat of the sun radiating from the rocks, it feels so good. The others are all gone now. Peter and James, Bartholomew, Levi, Mary of Magdala, Mother Mary. Yes, and even Paul, who came to the party so late. Of all those who knew Jesus well, I'm the only one who's left. You ask me about those days, and I'm glad you do, for someone needs to remember. Someone needs to keep this all. So I have written some of it. I've penned a bit of an account. Yes, I've read what the others have written, much of it very good. But there's much of it that was missed. So much they didn't say, so much I suspect they didn't hear, especially on that last night. On that last night, oh, it's burned in my memory like it was yesterday, not 60 years ago, not half a world away. I wrote much of it down shortly after, but I really didn't need to. I can still hear his voice in my head. It was all so confusing that night. Hope wrestling with hopelessness, love and pain all mixed up in his words and in his prayers. I had heard him pray so often, but never like that night. That night, in that upper room, it was like his soul stood naked in front of us, and the power of that prayer stunned us all. Then that long, pensive walk to the garden, almost in silence. It was like the dinner we shared. We'd had dinner together almost every night for 3 years. And the walk to Gethsemane, well, that was one of Jesus' favorite places to go, so we'd walk there often. It was all very familiar, but on that night, it was all also very strange. As we climbed the Mount of Olives, the temple glowed back over our shoulders. It was as if the whole cosmos was in chaos. It was so dark. The wind was wild, and there wasn't a star to be seen. And the sand blowing in from the desert was just raw on our faces. It felt as if the air was solid somehow. And then the garden. Oh, yes, the garden. You're right, my camp, the garden hardly touches it. Others have written more fully. I know. But you see, that part's so hard to think of. Still, after all these years, it rather hurts to speak of it. Oh, I know. I was young and foolish and full of false bravado and pseudo courage. The son of thunder, they called me. Not a quiet dreamer then, not a mystic. But it all changed that night. I can see him still. His face is ravaged with grief. Drops like blood are on his face and on his arms, all mixed with the tears and the sweat, the horror of it all. And his eyes. I have seen more suffering in the world than I ever care to remember. But that night, all of it, all of the suffering that ever was, all of the suffering that was then, and all of the suffering that would ever be, it was like all of it was in his eyes. And frankly, it was more than we could bear. And we were just so tired. The grief was wearing us out, and the fear, it was so much easier just to fall asleep than to watch. And so we slept. The first time he found us sleeping, he sounded, so heartbroken and actually almost angry. Couldn't we watch with him for 1 hour? And then I tried it. I really did. I heard him as he struggled with whether he would offer himself up, whether he would be obedient to what the Father had asked of him. I could hear him shrinking from what was coming ahead. And it was just so awful. And so I escaped into sleep. The last time he came and found us asleep, he was gentle. It was as if he had come to some sort of peculiar peace with all that was going to happen to him. Why do I write so little of that? And so little of what it was like for us? Well, I guess sometimes because it's just too painful. And I have to tell you that for a time, the shame was just indescribable. You see, I saw him. I saw the pain and I heard his retching sobs. And I didn't go to him. I didn't put my arms around him. I didn't comfort him. And that last night at dinner, when I was scared by all the things that he was saying, he had cradled me on his chest, let me lean against him. But now, when he was so alone, I deserted him. I betrayed him then, just as surely as Judas did later or Peter. I escaped into sleep. I'm old now and at peace. I am forgiven. I know that. He even trusted me with Mother Mary. That hurt the most, you understand. That after what I had done, after I deserted him that night in sleep, he still trusted me to care for his mother. Oh, I know I'm forgiven. But still, the regret is very deep. While he wept, I retreated into sleep. While he wept in despair and struggled, I dreamt. And I still dream now. And oh, those dreams. The fear and the wonder and the hope in those dreams, I'm still struggling to put words around it. No, I can't speak of it right now. It's really perhaps too sacred. I may write it. I may write it at some point. But I will tell you this. In these dreams, I no longer weep, and neither does he. All the tears are gone because, you see, God wiped them away.